some of you probably know by now. By the time you watch this, maybe you don't, which is kind of bizarre, but it does show that this may be a little deeper than what we initially thought. It's more than just a little spout between employee, employer, and employer. So we did a video back, a couple of days ago, or was it yesterday? Hell, I don't know. Might be yesterday. Yeah. Talk about Scarlett Johansson news that came out in which she had basically, the information came out, her lawyers speaking of the people that were representing her, are representing her, saying that, they're suing Disney because of a breach of contract. More so what it's in regards to is the release of the Black Widow movie being on Disney Plus instead of theaters, because it worked in her contract is her making money off of, I guess she had to get some either producer credit or something. Maybe it's just baked into her contract because of where she was at and how valuable she ends up being to this franchise, at least prior to now that she's out of there. Baked into the contract in some capacity was her getting laced up with some sort of money depending on the box office performance. Now, Black Widow didn't do that well, or not as well as what it probably should have, considering the magnitude of what Marvel movies are doing nowadays. Now, this could be a telling sign for up to come with the entire universe in itself. I don't know. We'll see. A lot of time that needs to pass in order for us to be able to make that distinction. However, they didn't make as much money. Not just her. We talked about this with that theater owners association, or whatever the name of it is, also getting upset with Disney about this same exact thing. And that is because it got released on I almost said console, because it got released on Disney Plus, they're saying that they missed out on a lot of money. And that's the case that that Black Widow is sure not Black Widow. Her name is not Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson. That is the case that she is making, her representatives are making. But what is bizarre about it, or what is rather unique about the situation, which actually tells more than initially, is the fact that Disney just flat out came out and responded basically the same day and publicly, albeit basically offering what their viewpoint is from a spokesperson standpoint, meaning that all their lawyers looked this over, funneled it through the mainstream media or the access media, and then the word got out. So this was something that is coordinated, and that's what I want you guys to focus on, that this is a lot bigger than maybe what we initially anticipated because of just that. Disney doesn't usually do this shit. So what happened? This is covered by Deadline. I believe they were actually the one that got the story, meaning that I could be incorrect, but I believe the spokesperson spoke to Deadline, and they were the first ones to get this statement. Walt Disney Company has fired back at Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit over the release of Black Widow. I thought it was Scarlett with two T's. Interesting. Well, I've been getting that shit wrong for a while. Or is it? No, it's spelled with two T's in the headline, but one T in the actual statement. I don't fucking know what it is. In a biting statement in which it said that the litigation showed a callous disregard to the COVID-19 pandemic, and even revealed that she has so far received $20 million from the project. So this is, again, you have to understand the context. They came out first saying, oh, we're suing Disney, blah, blah. Now, this is what the Disney spokesperson said. There is no merit whatsoever to this filing. The lawsuit is especially sad and distressing. These are some harsh words, by the way. In its callous disregard for the horrific and prolonged global effects of COVID-19 pandemic. My take on this is probably going to be completely different from everybody else's. Disney has fully complied with Ms. Johansson's contract, and furthermore, the release of Black Widow on Disney Plus with Premier Access has significantly enhanced her ability to earn additional compensation on top of the $20 million she has received to date. Now, again, I don't know if that's $20 million from the movie, $20 million that she's gotten from Marvel collectively. I don't know what that number actually is referring to. But the reason why this is so interesting is because we have to dissect what's being said here. Now, if you are working with people that have a lot of money, major production companies, record labels, all of those sorts of guys, you always have to have your lawyers look at it top to bottom. Always. Always. Not you. You can read it, but you don't understand the jargon and shit like they do. The shit that gets thrown at, you got to have somebody reputable looking that shit over, because you end up with situations kind of like this. But to be fair, considering how much money she's fucking making, there's absolutely no way that she doesn't have a team of people that know what they're doing. And before she signed any contract, they looked it over. However, this was the most interesting part of this. And I think we're going to see the coming effects of this over the next year, multiple years, actually, because of this approach. Not just with this company, not just with Disney, but really within the entertainment sector in itself. And this is why I'm saying my take is going to be completely different from this. Think about what it was that they said in response. And this is the lines that I want you to focus on. It's especially sad and distressing in its callous disregard for the horrific and prolonged global effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what is Disney doing right here? Disney is saying, well, because pandemic. That's what they're doing. They're saying because pandemic. You have to understand that pandemic happened. Therefore, we made adjustments. And it wasn't a breach of contract, obviously, is the claim that they're making. But they're trying to basically pull the Uno reverse card, basically saying that, hey, look at you, inconsiderate jackass. We have a pandemic. It's been a pandemic. So we had to release it this way. The reason why it's so fucking funny to me is because a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, including Scarlett Johansson, peddle a bunch of this fucking bullshit as it pertains to lockdowns, sort of economic kind of, well, you trying to act as if the economy is an on-off switch. And a lot of them within the entertainment sector were the guys that were deployed by the United States federal government, albeit through the ad council and everything else. But not just that, it was the mainstream authoritarian leftist position. Lock everything down. Shut it down. The reason why this is so fucking funny to me, and why, yes, I am an anarcho-capitalist. One of the biggest things, most important things, is enforcement of contracts when it comes to a voluntary society. So whatever the contract is, and obviously there's going to be some sort of arguments happening in courts, probably not a private court, which is where it should be handled, to try to ensure that, you know, there is no breach of it. I get that. But understanding how rich this is coming from that particular institution, the Hollywood elites, who had talked so much noise. Again, if I'm not mistaken, Scarlett was part of the masking, shut down, lockdown, stay home. These guys are heroes, talking about the frontline nurses and all of that shit. And all of that sort of rhetoric, all of that nonsense that they peddle that, again, shut folks down, had businesses destroyed, even in her own industry, had businesses destroyed in its regards. All of that shit happened over the past year and some change, right? And now the company that she's working for, or that employed her, at least in some capacity, pulled the fucking same card. And now she's pissed at it. Not saying that she doesn't have a reason to be pissed. I'm just saying it's rich coming from that side. Now, she's got a lot of money. And it's easy for me to say, well, I mean, shit, you got a lot of money still. But that's not the point. I do believe that it's about, okay, you got to honor some sort of contract. I totally understand that. But the hilarious thing about all of this is, and that it might actually work, Disney might just win this out either way, because they get to pull that card, which is the same card that the Hollywood elites tried to pull on everyone else, but it didn't impact them. So when they would go pontificate, when they would go lecture everybody a blue check marked out of their mind on Twitter, and go lecture everybody about how they should get the jab and stay home and all of that sort of bullshit that they had been lecturing everybody else about surrounding COVID-19, now that card is getting pulled on Scarlett's crowd, basically saying because pandemic, and maybe they may end up having a point to where I don't know what the contract said, to where she's going to be left some sort of asked out. And by that, I mean, I'm not saying asked out like, oh, she's getting $20 million. That's a lot of money. But you get what it is that I'm saying, not getting as much as she could have got if it weren't for all of that COVID-19 bullshit. And by that, I mean more so, the government's response and everything else. So Disney pulled the card that they pulled on everybody else. And I find that fucking interesting coming from that industry. Because pandemic. That's why we had to release it that way. That's what they said. They said, and again, repeat, the lawsuit is especially sad and distressing in this callous disregard for the horrific and prolonged global effects of COVID-19 pandemic. So basically, again, they are saying, how dare you? How dare you is what she said. Or what Disney said, the spokesperson said. Don't you know there's been a pandemic? Disney's clutching their pearls right now. You can read it and you can visualize it. It's pearl clutching by text. How dare you? It's been a pandemic. The same thing that same group class of people have been saying to us for I don't know a year and some change. So it's very rich coming from this, but this is what I had always said. See, these people aren't going to understand how this actually has impacted other folks. Now, yes, it's going to be different because she's going to be, I don't know what her spending habits are, but she's going to be generally one of the highest paid actresses. Okay, right? In comparison to the mom and pop shop that had to end up closing their business down for good because, well, they couldn't remain open because you basically made it illegal for them to have customers in the previous capacity. So this was the point. If you go watch my old videos when it came to COVID-19, this is the point that I was making. And that was that the reason why all of these Hollywood elites, these entertainers, these politicians can make these rules and just tell you to shut up, sit down, don't move. It's so easy for them to say that because their bottom line isn't impacted, or so they thought. Now it's impacting her pockets. And I think we maybe are going to see this with other people within the entertainment sector if this continues and these companies are going the route of, okay, instead of releasing it, having a theatrical exclusive release, what we're going to do is just put the bitch on our streaming service. Why? Because pandemic. You don't want people to get, you don't want to kill grandmas. What? You don't want to kill grandmas and all the kids and the children and you don't want to do that, do you? There's only one. We have to do it this way. So now their bottom line is impacted, and they didn't see that initially. I don't think a lot of Hollywood elites, I don't think any elite really in general that were operating more so like some of the richer elites that still answer to somebody. Like Scarlett still answers to, like her paycheck is in some way impacted by Disney. So she's rich as fuck, but there's always a head honcho. And the people that thought that, well, we were good to go are not as good to go as they thought because their bottom line is impacted. And it's by the same excuse that everybody else's bottom line was impacted, particularly the business owners, and not just the business owners, employees of those businesses, because they didn't get to work, depending on what industry they were in. It was literally illegal for them to do so. So they were missing out on money. It impacted a lot of people in different ways, and even the Hollywood elite. So while I will say whatever the contract said needs to be honored, and if Disney is breaching that, then of course they need to be made to pay for their mistakes. But from just more of a cultural standpoint, it's rich coming from one of the Hollywood elites, which is the same class who sat there and lectured you, basically said, whatever the authoritarian left said when it came to COVID-19, lockdowns, welfare statism, get the jab, cover your face, they're heroes, all of that stuff. And it was so easy for them to say all of that, definitely when it came to some sort of lockdowns or restrictions, because their bacon was basically not dependent on it, are finding actually, wait a minute, it was, because Disney pulled that reverse card. Very slick of them.